So, troubling taxonomies. One of the first maxims that one is taught at business school is what matters gets measured. The corollary to that is what's measured gets managed. So this sounds easy enough, right? We'll find out it's a little more complicated than that when we discuss this matter with our panel. So let me invite to the stage our speakers. Ornsaran Pome Manuamorn from the World Bank, Susanna Hassenhauer from SAP, and Jeremy Lardot of Higindex Cascal. Welcome, please. And you'll see your visages on the screen. Please sit underneath them. That would be helpful. Great. Welcome. A round of applause for my panelists. Anybody who'll get up in the morning and talk about data and taxonomies, you've really got to give them your support, okay? So this really is a riveting topic, I promise you. Maybe we can start with you, Ornsaran. You're at the World Bank. You have a perspective looking across the region on this. And there is a nice and pleasing thought that we may move towards convergence on taxonomies. But I saw a report published last year by one of the consultancies that suggested that I think in Southeast Asia there were almost 4 different taxonomies related to this topic, maybe 47. You'll know better than I do, but the point is, far from convergence, there seems to be divergence. Yes. So give us a snapshot of where we stand on sustainability reporting and what is the direction of travel. Are we converging or diverging?
I think first, let me set the stage on what's happening globally on taxonomies. Then we can link that to reporting, right? Yeah. You're right that I think one of the major trends we see is proliferation of taxonomies. Last year, when the Sustainable Banking and Finance Network launched Taxonomy Toolkit, we counted 47 taxonomies. I just attended another meeting last week. By now, it's around 70.
Oh. So my report is already out of date. Okay, but in the wrong direction, unfortunately.
So we have more taxonomies coming up, right? And the taxonomy is used to focus on climate change mitigation, which is reducing greenhouse gas emission, and focus on a few sectors like energy and transport. Now we see the expansion of taxonomy to more sectors like green buildings, manufacturing, and covering more objectives such as climate change adaptation, circular economy as well. Third, we see the taxonomy are getting a bit more complicated. Before, they used to provide definition for green assets and activity. Now, many taxonomies have traffic light system where they provide classification for transition asset and activities as well. So these are the key big trends that are going on. Now, since taxonomies are developed, now we are moving into the arena of implementation. And of course, reporting is one of the key applications of taxonomy. However, given this landscape of so many taxonomies, are we actually moving towards convergence? I think that the term that is being used now is interoperable. We are looking to foster common principles by which taxonomy should be interoperable. And that means they use some common design principles, they cover the same elements, and they have some consistent methodology in defining what's green and what's transition.
So is that moment when Windows began able to talk to Mac and everyone's lives improved? We're close to that moment, are we?
I think there is a recognition that we need to move towards more comparability and interoperability. And there's a conversation that's going on for the taxonomies to go towards that direction.
And you talked about transition assets. And of course, we've talked already several times on this stage about that, sometimes euphemistically called brown to green. But some do challenge, and Europe particularly, Europe is the king of taxonomies, right? They don't have a topic for which they don't have multiple taxonomies, and they'll add more complexity to them every year. There was a huge debate about whether gas should be allowed in the taxonomy to be considered a green fuel or not, and there were different European states divided on that matter. What do you find as a global trend on this topic of whether natural gas particularly, is it the bridge fuel to sustainability or is it a bridge to nowhere?
I think in the context of taxonomy, we have to understand that when you want to define a transition asset, that takes into consideration of 2 aspects. First, transition asset, they may not be green today, but they still have to be aligned with the trajectory to the Paris Agreement, for example. On the other hand, transition has to take into account the local context, right? Different countries start from a different starting points on the transition journey. So within this framework, you will see that different taxonomies define differently where gas fit into this journey. And my point is that there are some discrepancy in how different taxonomies define gas vis-a-vis transition category, but that takes into account the local context of different countries developing the taxonomy
That
as
seems
well.
eminently sensible to me, but it might provide some challenges for this interoperability if we have systems that have different values placed or different weights. But I'm sure we can get into that in a moment. Susanna, let's come to you. Obviously, your company provides technology and software solutions, so I'm sure you're a big advocate of those. But can you give us, because you also have a penetrating look into lots of companies around the world and in different regions, what trends do you see from your vantage point?
Well, first of all, if we talk about taxonomies or sustainability reporting, ESG reporting more broadly, many enterprises are facing the challenge of still doing these things very manually. And I think the opportunity for most companies and sustainability departments is to use more technology for this. And let me say upfront that in an essence, digital transformation or the digitalization of corporate processes and functions is really the foundation for greater transparency and improvements for sustainability purposes as well. Because if you don't know what's happening where, how can you actually improve your sustainability performance, be it in terms of decarbonization or improving the social or governance-related impacts? Now, if we look at what's happening in the real world, materials get extracted, get processed, and each of these activities carries an environmental footprint. Now, ERP systems have been designed to carry that kind of transactional information about the materials used, about the processes and so on. That's been there for decades as well.
Yeah.
But now the novelty is that we can use such transactional information and to enrich it with sustainability data. I'm talking about carbon data, for instance. So that's really something we're helping our clients to make use of. And let's come also to the latest pinnacle of technology, which is AI, artificial intelligence, generative AI. Once we establish such continuous data flows from all parts of the company operations and from the value chain as well, it becomes so much easier to do the reporting or to the right disclosures for taxonomies as well. And it becomes lesser of a manual burden, right? But of course, we need to understand that, that using AI and automation is only as good as the data that is built on.
Well,
right?
thank you for going there, because I was going to challenge you a little bit. I'm a huge fan of data, digitalization, AI. In fact, I've written part of a major package we're going to run in The Economist shortly on the potential for AI to have dramatic positive impacts on business that'll run in the next couple of weeks. But the first rule of data is garbage in, garbage out, right?
Absolutely.
I have seen analysis published that suggests that something like 78% of Asian companies struggle with data quality issues for sustainability reporting, despite the proliferation of ESG data platforms, right? That was a particular report last year, but even if the numbers are a little off, the basic point remains the same. We have to ensure that the quality of the underlying data. Otherwise, flying a rocket ship like SAP won't help if what you're putting in is
Absolutely.
is rubbish.
And it's critical that companies conduct, first of all, the materiality analysis, because maybe not every data point is equally important.
Right.
And then with that kind of understanding of what matters most, it's then possible to create such continuous data flows, which can then feed into AI models. And AI today can generate ESG reports, for instance, right? But of course, we need to have the right guardrails for AI development in place, human oversight, and the quality of data.
Yeah.
And the second point that's really coming up in practice also is the increased need for assurance, even audits, in the ESG reporting space. And here it's critical that you can establish where the data comes from, what happened to it before it went to the reporting. And here it's essential to keep the data lineage auditable and transparent, right? And this is something we stand for at SAP as well. Basically, we look at sustainability data with the same rigor as financial data and apply the same
That's very
principles
important. This
for
is one
that.
of the themes that comes up quite strongly in the series of sustainability summits that I chair for us here at the Economist. We do this, of course, on 4 continents. And increasingly, the CSO and the CFO at companies work much more closely together. That this is no longer something that's seen as a side project or as a marketing function, but core to the business decision making for strategy. And once the CFO is involved, you know that the numbers had better be right? There's materiality, there's going to be accountability. And so we begin to get to a place where sustainability metrics, you have to kick the tires, you have to get the numbers right, so you don't have that problem of garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, and I'd also like to add the dimension of actually connecting real-world data, sustainability data with financial data, especially in the context of taxonomies. Enterprises need the capability to express exactly how much of business value, profit, and loss is actually associated with certain activities. So another principle that we are advocating for and have solutions for at SAP is connecting carbon data with financial data. So you can take, as part of the SAP solutions, pretty much any financial metrics, and with the right carbon data work having been done, know what's the carbon footprint of profit and loss or a certain profit center, cost center, which is very helpful for these taxonomy reporting applications as well.
I could see the value of such a dashboard, the quality of the data. We just heard on the prior panel about carbon credits. There are a lot of questions, of course, on the integrity of that data. So I would still caution everyone in the room, make sure to do your homework, because you can have a false precision of having a sophisticated dashboard, but in fact, the underlying numbers may not be as firm. So always need to kick the tires on that. Jeremy, let's come to you. Give us your perspective. Tell us, for those in the audience who may not know what your company does, what your perspective is and how you come to the sustainability reporting question.
Thank you, Vijay. So I'm with Cascale. Cascale is a multi-stakeholder organization. It's been in existence for about 15 years. And I can tell you the origin story that'll give you a sense of what we do. Basically, Patagonia and Walmart, of all companies, as unlikely partners as those could be, came together to recognize that they had a shared supply chain in the textile, apparel, footwear sector. And that rather than sending multiple duplicative data collection surveys and auditors to their suppliers, they could perhaps collaborate in a pre-competitive way and establish a shared language of sustainability performance measurement and reduce the duplicative burden on their shared suppliers. And so was born the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, which we changed our name last year to evolve, since now we are more than servicing more than just the apparel sector, but the global consumer goods industry. So we manage and develop the Higg Index suite of tools, which is a sustainability performance measurement system for the supply chain and the products originating in the apparel and footwear sector and expanding to other adjacent sectors. I'll give you a very concrete example of the taxonomy and the reporting burden. I was in Pakistan last week visiting manufacturers, one of the leading, largest manufacturer in Pakistan. And Pakistan exports a lot of textile apparel, in particular denim, homes textiles, very large manufacturing hub. And so I was with one of these manufacturers who told me that every month they have to report to over 5 different systems their monthly energy, water, and waste generation to 5 different customers. Every year, they also do that for over 20 different customers in over 12 different platforms. All right? So that's a real problem because, and in their words, it's brain damaging, right, for their teams to be doing this exercise over and over. And the reporting burden means that the time they spend doing this, they're not spending doing other more productive things. And the other problem with that is that without a shared language of measurement, you get to this system where you get different signals of priorities from your stakeholders, right? Should we prioritize solar PV, or should we prioritize PPAs for wind solar, or the thermal, the boiler which runs on perhaps coal? Like, what is the priority here? If you have different measurement systems, you get different signals. when we look at our member base, so we represent over 300 members in the world, manufacturers and brands retailers. We talk a lot to the manufacturers. Like the unique approach that Cascale took is that we involve the manufacturer base as much as the brands and retailers, so the suppliers and the buyers, in the development of the system for reporting. And when we talk to the manufacturing members, 95% of them report that they're dealing with duplicative reporting systems. I'll give you one more point on this.
Well, yeah, on this, tell us what progress has been made, because it sounds like we're still in that world of multiple reporting systems.
So there's been some limited progress.
Or what's the obstacle to progress? What's
right,
the reason this is proliferating still?
The obstacle to progress currently, look at the regulatory environment with CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive in the EU, is prompting a huge move towards more and more data collection in the supply chain. That is not good news for the problem at stake here, right? And that is what is prompting more and more of the buyer side, the brands, the retailers, to send out data collection surveys in different formats to their suppliers. Some progress has been made through initiatives like ours, like the Higg Index, where we bring an industry together and we try to drive convergence on shared tools, like the Higg Index suite of tools, to support the reduced duplication, right? And so when I look around the industry, what I want to see is more collaboration at the industry level, where brands and retailers share suppliers, and within the supplier base, when you share customers, to come together through organizations like Cascale.
Right. Well, if Walmart and Patagonia can work together, surely more companies can. Susanna, you've been wanting to get in here. What's on your mind?
I'd like to share a little bit more about industry collaborations and the need for the different kinds of, private sector and NGO.
Yeah, give us something concrete. Make it concrete.
So if we talk about greenhouse gas emissions, for instance, and the very challenging part of that, the scope 3 emissions. Of course, we have the greenhouse gas protocol and so on, but traditionally it's been quite difficult for companies to actually exchange scope 3 information about the purchased goods and services, for instance. So that's why the World Business Council for Sustainable Development came together with many companies from a variety of industries to define the standard to actually, through technology platforms, share that scope 3 information. Yeah, the standard is out there and is being used, for instance, by the automotive industry, effectively today. Another example is the chemicals industry. And so also we as a technology company, of course, we take such a standard and put that into our solutions and provide sustainability data exchange for companies. And the benefit of this is, again, that we have sustainability departments that are overworked, that are doing lots of manual work. And if you look at a typical big organization, they are buying tens of thousands of products and materials from thousands of buyers. So I think it's quite logical that you can't be dealing with the emissions from that in a manual way. So we need the data platforms to share that data. And then, again, we can also use AI to deal with that data. So AI can read the carbon emissions. AI can also identify carbon emissions, even if the supplier is not able to provide the actual data. So again, I think the standards are out there for increasing number of industries, but it's now also a question of the companies in the value chain to start using those standards and sharing that data, because no one is going to decarbonize by themselves. We really need the partners in the value chains to collaborate.
Susanna, you made a good point. A couple of times you talked about the role of AI, and in some ways, Jeremy, you explained the supply side reasons why we have more proliferations of these sorts of data requests. That's not a good use of people's time necessarily. I have done reporting in a number of different industries where we're seeing edge cases, early cases of the application of particularly machine learning, but some new LLMs as well, being used in this way for sustainability reporting. There are companies that do nothing but this, helping their clients try to apply these technologies to relieve the burden from the poor bean counter and put it on the backs of the AI so that you can be relieved to do high-value tasks instead. From your perspective, I want to turn to you, Ansar. Are you seeing this, because you tend to have a macro perspective across sectors and across countries, Is this potential oversold, or is this something that you see having real traction that could help relieve this burden? Because I don't see governments stepping back from their demands. That is, the demand for this from regulators is going to continue.
I think regulators recognize that we need to strike a balance, right, between having a system that ensures transparency and credibility, but on the other hand, not overburdening the reporters and especially companies that are smaller like SMEs. So I think the global conversation on this recognize this point. And in the context of taxonomy, I mentioned that there is an effort to harmonize and ensure interoperability between the taxonomies, which in essence, this will reduce transaction costs, right? It will reduce the cost for double verification. Like if you comply with one country taxonomy, then you can automatically comply with other countries' taxonomy if they are interoperable, right? But in terms of using taxonomy to support a reporting system in a way that reducing burden for reporting entities, there are many steps that could be done, like going forward. For example, the taxonomy is not a reporting tool in and of itself. It provides definitions that then you have to link the reporting system to, or you can link so many other things to, for example.
Sure, it's a framework.
It's a framework, right? Now you can issue supplementary guidelines or templates or even a toolkit to ensure the protocol by which you would apply the definitions in taxonomy to reporting. And these guidelines or template or even checklists should aim to provide clarity for user on, for example, when the data doesn't exist, what do you do? How do you fill the data gap, for example, on scope 3 that you currently don't have? And how long is that transition relief period, for example? So I think in this space, we see a lot of developing countries are still figuring out the right balance on making use of taxonomy to ensure credibility, but while reducing the burden on reporters. The EU provides a very good example, but in the context of emerging economies, we still seeing regulators figuring out different approaches to ensure the balance.
I want to come to the audience, so please get your thoughts together for a couple of good questions. But just to follow up on this, in ASEAN, I think we have a traffic light system that's been introduced. How effective has that been? How would you improve it?
The traffic light system actually provide more clarity to how would you classify assets for sustainable finance. Before, earlier generation of taxonomy has green activities, right? And much of sustainable finance has gone into the green space. But we have to face it that a lot of assets in the economy now, they are not in the green territory. But there are a subset of assets that actually can transition towards green. And as long as they follow some credible pathway and timeline. So this traffic light taxonomy has provide a lot of opportunity for countries, banks, companies to clarify the space of credible transition. So they can direct capital flows towards this asset and also have more opportunity even to attract international capital flows to support this transition assets, not just the green. So I would see that traffic light taxonomy enhance the opportunities.
So you're a supporter. You think it's a good idea.
Definitely. Yeah.
That's good to hear. Great. Let's see. There's let's go to the question in the middle row here. Let's get a microphone. If we have a second microphone, let's queue up another question in the front in the interest of efficiency. Let's get a second microphone here. Thank you, sir. Please identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Yannis Christodoulou. I'm the founder of Athene Consulting, a company that's specializing in developing people in agribusinesses. My question, what role does blockchain play in taxonomy, and especially in helping to standardize a sustainable reporting system, and how well is it used in your organizations? Thank you.
Right. Okay. Distinctive question. Blockchain. Who wants to take that? Jeremy, so like you're chomping at the bit there, or Susanna?
Yeah, happy to take
And let's get the microphone over here, please.
So blockchain plays a major role in tracking commodities in value chains. Let me give you an example. For instance, palm oil is a product that increasingly buyers want to buy with sustainability certificates. But now the challenge in the value chains is that we have palm oil products, for instance, from different sources, and then along the processing also materials from different sources get commingled, in other words, mixed with each other, and it's physically impossible to kind of detect how much of which material comes from which source. So the solution that is being used here by companies such as Unilever and their suppliers, also our customer, is that they create a blockchain to basically mimic that value chain. So we create tokens for the different materials, and as they process and progress in the value chain, the tokens get assigned to wallets. We cannot lose them. We cannot add them
How widespread
randomly.
is this, Susanna? Give us I've heard about blockchain applications, and The Economist, our technology editor, was very enthusiastic about blockchains. Maybe not all of the potential has yet been realized, but it's a brilliant conceptual tool. In your experience and that of our panelists, how widespread is the use of blockchain in supply chains? I know Walmart uses it, Alibaba uses it. There's some specific company examples, but what have you seen?
From a apparel and footwear standpoint, I remember 8-10 years ago, it was the talk of the town. We were going to solve traceability using blockchain. The reality is, here we are today, it is nowhere to be seen, right? It's trying to use aerospace technology to make coffee at this point.
I do like good coffee.
Yeah, I
take your
coffee,
point.
But the reality is, maybe you could use aerospace to make coffee, technology to make coffee, but the vast majority of us don't need and couldn't, scale that. And in the reality of the dynamic supply chain and just the conditions in which the supply chain.
Let's take a quick straw poll. In your own company supply chains, how many of you have some use of blockchain in your supply chain? 1, 2, 3. Okay, obviously a very small percentage. Not everyone has a supply chain. It might be,
but it's kind of like AI. You were bringing up AI for like data collection. Are we using AI to create the data that the supplier really needs to transact with its customer? No. Why are we talking about in the sustainability space? Because it's hard, right, to collect the sustainability data. But the reality is now this is going to be mandatory data, and AI is not really going to solve this. It's all about making this data part of the everyday transactional processes between the supplier and the buyer.
Okay, a dose of realism. Let's go to the question here, please. Identify yourself.
From TV Suit again. So we specialize in testing, auditing, and certifications. So I think just now we're talking about the global taxonomies as well as the need of the sustainability claim disclosure. I think we are aware that the European Commission already launched the Omnibus simplification package, which actually going to simplify law and regulations of the sustainability as well as EU investment, including CSRD, CSDD, and CBAM that we discussed this morning.
The alphabet soup. Your question, please.
My question is, what is your view about this, and what is the impact of the investment in Asia, because it's a part of the value chain?
Sure. Okay, great. That's specific. Who wants to take that?
Yeah, I can start. I would say that is a trend that we would see more, that to make taxonomy application more easily accessible by different entities. So apart from the omnibus proposal, right, that provide to simplify reporting requirements, we are also seeing initiatives to come up with more simplified reporting requirement and use for SMEs, for example, recognizing that given proportionality, they may not need to meet all of the same requirements. So I think in the long run, this is the trend where we're going, and it's part of figuring out the right balance between credibility and efficiency. So I think this is positive trend, and it would encourage more application of a reference tool such as taxonomy.
Particularly in Southeast Asia, how big an impact will some of these trends have?
I think that would make quite a positive impact in Southeast Asia. I've been to a lot of kind of discussion on taxonomy application, and one of the major concerns we heard a lot is the concern for smaller enterprises and SME, that taxonomy application could get too complicated for them. So the effort to simplify this process, I think, would benefit more entities in the economy.
I'm glad you mentioned SMEs. Overwhelmingly, the economy, of course, in this part of the world is driven by small and medium enterprise. So it's very important to think about solutions that are relevant and useful for them. We're just running out of time, so I'm going to stop here. I want to thank my panelists for their wonderful contributions on a very technical topic. They made it very interesting. Please give them a nice round of applause.